an election in an atmosphere of insecurity, and every region of the country have their fair share of insecurity. You go to the northeast, you see the terrorist attack. The terrorist attack, the Boko Haram, the ISWAP are operating there. You go to the northwest, you see banditry and a bit of terrorist attack. You come to the north central, where you have farmer elder crisis. You go to the southwest, this is where you have kidnapping, and there you also have most of these electoral violence taking place. Then you come to the south, you have the issue of oil theft, the insecurity around that region, and then you come to the southeast, where you have the secessionist agitation. So this should give you a brief map of that. Look, every aspect, every region in the country is facing one insecurity or the other. However, what it means now is this, that look, most of these forces at play also are calling for attention. And that is why in the southeast, you see maybe the IPOB, all the forces at play there are calling for attention. And one of the ways they think they can get this attention is by scuttling the election. You come to the, northeast, the north central, and the northwest too. Most of the forces are also calling for attention. And election is one of the ways where they think their voices can be heard. By scuttling the election, they think people will begin to, or the government will begin to listen to them. So these are the forces at play. And however, that is just outside the electoral circle. Again, you now begin to look at within the electoral circle, there are political parties, there are politicians who also feel that, look, they are not well prepared, and they also feel probably they are not likely going to win this election. So the best they could do is to cause violence, so that probably they have more time to also, prepare. Again, one thing you also need to understand with this election is that this is the first time since we returned to democracy in 1999 that we will be having an election that each of the region have representation on the ballot. And that is also telling you something. For instance, you go to the southeast, they have a major candidate. You go to the southwest, they have a major candidate. You go to the north, they have a major candidate, both northeast and northwest. All of them have a major candidate on their ballot. And that alone is already polarizing the country. And this already also telling you that, look, we might begin to have people going back to their region to fortify and solidify their base within their region. And that is, again, a potential for violence, where you want to see that if the other person comes here to my region to campaign, then they are likely going to be attacked. And these are the indices at play here that we need to look at.
Bukola Edo, we're certainly grateful for your time, and unfortunately we've run out of it, but we appreciate your analysis so far. Bukola Edo is the team lead, Kimpact Development Initiative. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
All right, Newsday continues with more of our top stories to come with Temitope Fabemi and Howard McCann. I am Mbaye Mutimiri Epeyong.
I'm Cynthia Are. Please stay with us.
This na Emeka. He like to dey keep money for her. As CBN deadline don dey near so. This one na wise Emeka. As he don hear say deadline dey near, he wan carry money go deposit for the right place with Access Bank.
It's time to spread your wings and fly. Reach for the sky.
Even if the bank too far, na to go to the nearest Access Closer agent. No carry last with your money.
Get up right now, right now.
Money wey you deposit for Access Bank, na money wey go make your mind rest well. Don't let the money spoil for your hand, oh. 10 million naira today, fit be 0 naira tomorrow. Oya o, Musa, Shade, Onyinye, carry your money go Access Bank or Access Closer agent wey near you. than banking.
What does endless possibilities mean to you? A shop in the perfect location? In the hottest part of town? You don't have to own a physical store to do business. That's why Flutterwave Store helps to put those dreams on track. Providing you with a business solution that connects you to customers around the world. No matter where you are, connect to millions of customers globally on Flutterwave Store. The business solution that helps your business thrive. Start selling on flutterwave.com/store today.
Glad to have you join us again here on Arise News. I'm Hawa Mukan. This is Newsday.
And I'm Temitope Fagbemi. For the next 2 hours, we'll be bringing you all the day's stories live from Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos, including search crews in Nepal find black box data recorders from a crashed passenger plane in which 69 bodies have been recovered.
Russia and Belarus begin 2 weeks of joint military drills as concerns grow that Moscow is pressuring its closest ally to join the war in Ukraine.
And South African court holds private prosecution against President Cyril Ramaphosa as initiated by former President Jacob Zuma. Details in a moment.
Recovery crews at the site of the Yeti Airlines crash in Nepal have found the plane's black box data recorders. They said they are in good condition. No one is believed to have survived. At least 69 bodies have been recovered. The air accident is the country's worst in 3 decades. A national day of mourning is being observed. The plane went down on Sunday near Pokhara's new international airport that opened only 2 weeks ago. It was traveling from Kathmandu in the mountain nation. The terrain and weather can be difficult to navigate. Others say safety standards and aircrafts needed to be improved and updated. A government body has been set up to investigate the cause of the crash.
My niece was very talented. She was also a very good student. She was busy with her studies in Kathmandu. She was also running a makeup studio along with an online business platform. She would never hurt anyone. She was simple, and now God has taken away such a nice person. May her soul rest in peace. Everybody in the family is in pain. She was the only daughter in the family. The family is deeply devastated. I am not able to think how I can console the other members of the family.
Russia and Belarus have begun 2 weeks of Air Force military drills. The two countries have held joint exercises in the past year as Russia began its offensive in Ukraine. This time, the Belarusian Defense Ministry has insisted the tactical flight exercises are defensive in nature to prepare for possible combat missions. There are concerns Moscow is pushing Minsk to join the war in Ukraine.
A cargo ship carrying 13,000 tons of peas from Ukraine has run aground in Istanbul. The vessel brought traffic to a standstill on the Bosphorus Strait. Several tugs were sent to help the ship. No damage or spill has been recorded.
Okay, we're going live to London, where presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, is addressing the Chatham House in London.
Dr. Ellis Vines and his team for the global impact of their mission and commitment to engagement with nation building in Nigeria. In providing this global platform to interrogate the vision of those seeking to lead Nigeria at this time with clear existential threats, as I will discuss shortly, are pervasive across our dear country. This Chatham House event challenges us to a new thinking. We have an alarming insecurity that has led to loss of many lives and properties, significant decline in food and economic output, immense trauma that has compromised the mental health of communities, and in some cases, irredentive pressures and disaffection with the Nigerian project. The economy is in crisis, with a troubling debt profile worsened by oil theft of proportion once hard to imagine. 2 economic recessions in 6 years and lamentable power sector that have significantly constrained manufacturing and social life. The Nigerian state is captive to an elite gang-up and a rentier political economy that concentrated power in hands of those who came to power and influence mainly through their own contrivances and influence rather than affirmation of the people, and therefore do not have the incentive to serve the people. Even after exploiting the ethnic and religious cleavages, sentiments to ascend to political power, the very people on whose sentiments they grab power often become the primary victims of such political fraud that has rendered Nigeria a failing state with worsening leadership crisis. Consequently, Nigerian democracy had been on the wane, evident in Afrobarometer longitudinal tracking, which reveals low voter turnout. But this seems to have turned around dramatically last year, allowing independent National Electoral Commission to register over 12 million new voters, with many more complaining they wish to register, but unable to do so due to INEC deadline. What prompted this turnaround? We may ask. The reason for these very high stakes are lurking in the facts of demographics, with our dominant population, the youth, frustrated and unhappy with the status quo and diminished opportunities in Nigeria in an age of globalization, when internet can easily reveal to them prosperous homes of those who live in a better led and governed countries. How did we, Nigeria, plunk or get here in such an economic decline that we have overtaken India as a home for the biggest pool of absolute poor in the world, when they are 7 times our population? While the poverty rate in India is 16%, that of Nigeria is 63%, with 133 million people classified as multidimensionally poor. This is unacceptable and needs to change. What Nigeria needs is a great escape. As 2015 Nobel Prize winner in economics, Angus Deaton of Princeton University, elucidated that what separates poor and rich nations is attributed to health and education. But what provides quality health and educational system for a society committed and focused leadership that can build and sustain public wealth, as I was told by Professor Donald Jacob of Kellogg School of Management. In many ways, this is the heart of my remarks today, which are deeply rooted in my upbringing, particularly my mother's counsel, that I live a life of positive impact and manage both personal and public resources most prudently for the sustainable, inclusive growth of development of the society. It is this principle that guided my stewardship as governor of Anambra State of Nigeria and led to our much commended performance with some prize awards to show for it. Some awards for outstanding accomplishments in key Millennium Development Goals, now Sustainable Development Goals. It is the same counsel and principle that is guiding and motivating me to offer to serve in a new Nigeria. The answer lies in leadership, institution, and demographics. The good news is that the demography is driving the change we're seeing in Africa. With election after election last year in Africa, in which establishment parties are being upturned by new and small parties, it is this change that my vision of policy change and institutional development is rooted in a push for a broadened scope of social mobility and freedom for Nigeria, particularly for the youths and women. Like the former British Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, said, at the start of the independence decade, a wind of change is blowing across Africa. Today, that new wind of change sees the ballot box as being instrumental to changing of bad leadership. Senator Yusuf Dat Ahmed, my running mate, and I are committed to new politics that start with ethics of servant leaders and anchored on marriage of clean hearts and skillful hands. We know that unless we change the politics by changing the political leadership, we are stuck in this terrible state of underdevelopment and misery. We will build patriotically our institutions, particularly the ones directly responsible for implementing government policies, to make them fit for purpose. It is not to be doubted at the global scene that Nigeria is blessed with some of the most entrepreneurial youths in the world, in science, in business, in art and entertainment. We believe that what remains is the changing of leadership class from predictators to creators of value, from those whose wealth and power drive from the destruction of the nation and its people to those who have demonstrated competence, character, capacity to invest in human development, create prosperity, and instill right values and ethical conduct deserving of servant leaders. Nigeria today is at a critical juncture, and the people led by the youths, brutalized by bad leadership, are awake and leading the movement to transform Nigerian politics and restart the engine of economic growth and social stability. We count ourselves honored to be trusted, especially by the youth, to lead this democratic revolution, and we are deeply pledged to do so with sincerity, accountability, and unquenchable love and desire for a better Nigeria. We are simply the symbol of Nigerian youth struggle to reverse this ugly trend that keeps driving them into social anomia, despair, and rejection of their country. We are determined to do everything that needs to be done to rescue and lead our country to prosperity, freedom, security, and peace. We will use merit to assemble competent Nigerians from all sections of Nigeria to form effective government of national unity. At the heart of my goal here today is to look at our Labour Party's key policy plans and how they will drive up the quality of life of average Nigerian, dramatically reduce poverty, and return Nigeria to a place of strategic relevance in a world that needs a thriving and well-governed Nigeria, stabilizing the continent of Africa, making it high-value add for a planet impaired by environmental challenges, terrorism, and inequity. I also plan to speak on institutions and how the leadership we offer can facilitate the evolution of stronger institutions with the rule of law a key anchor to nation building in Nigeria. I have no doubt that the policy choice we favor and the strong institutions Labour Party will facilitate will move Nigeria from a country of rent seekers sharing oil receipts and consuming conspicuously to the one that produces based on vast factor endowments whose value chains can move us towards a high employment economy. We will turn our youth budge to a democratic dividend rather than today's harvest of time bomb of violence, insecurity from uneducated, unemployed, and marginalized youth. This forms the first and most important thrust of our government priorities, without which the rest will not be achieved, to secure Nigeria, end banditry and insurgents, and unite our dear nation to manage our diversity such that no one is left behind. The growing insecurity you see in Nigeria today is not because the enemy is formidable. It is not a lack of focused leadership, ineffective security government structure, and poor coordination from the center. All this needs to be addressed by first projecting strong leadership, signal that will allow both state and non-state actors to be mobilized around single vision. Then by pursuing a robust reform of the security governance structure, coordinating mechanism that assures all levels of government, federal, state, local, with three-level policing are aligned with strong collaboration with partners from both private and development groups to provide required services and deliver results for every Nigerian. Once this is done, it is important to have a single, clear, coherent, consistent development process. It is important for institutions to be able to provide strong leadership, coordination, capability, partner and engage collaboratively with all relevant stakeholders in an environment that mutually reinforces values. The second plank of our policy thrust is to shift emphasis from consumption to production by running a production-centered economy that is driven by agrarian revolution and export-oriented industrialization. With about 70 million hectares of arable land, we will pursue an agricultural revolution through proper segmentation of Nigerian to activate and harness factor endowment of different parts of the country for both rapid and mechanized agricultural development and as a pillar for Nigerian other sectorial development and industrialization. We will incentivize and invest in an agro-cluster and industrial cluster development across our geo-resource zones to take advantage of agglomeration and scale effects, of particularly in the northwest, northeast, and north central regions of Nigeria. We will dredge both River Niger and River Benue, build dams massively to support planting of economic trees across the country for local usage, poverty and elimination, export and revenue generation. A key task is to sequentially but decisively dismantle the inefficient and anti-market distortionary structures restraining the Nigerian economy from creating a precondition for a dynamic pro-market economy. We will employ entrepreneurial governance to dismantle impediments to free trade and ease of doing business, and implementing radical economic policies that will drastically reduce our debt service, a major drain to government revenue as it is today. Our micro, small and medium-scale enterprises will be robustly supported. Further borrowing must be strictly for productive purposes and not for consumption. While we aggressively pursue the activation of all opportunities in oil and gas value chain, we will target incentive schemes that will be professionally administered to diversify our non-oil export portfolio with proper consideration and management of climate change risk and opportunities. The third pillar of our government priorities is to restructure the polity through effective legal and institutional reforms to entrench rule of law, aggressively fight corruption, reduce the cost of governance, and establish honest and efficient civil service. Reducing costs of governance in Nigeria is an effective way of fighting institutional corruption. In addition to reducing the cost of governance and streamlining government operations for efficiency and effectiveness, we will ensure that reforms we pursue will not in any way affect the livelihood of our hardworking and efficient civil servants. Critical to fighting corruption, we will install a new budgeting system founded on the cardinal principle of public accountability, objective setting, and program implementation. This is against the extant budgetary principles of revenue mobilization, expenditure allocation, borrowing without emphasis on monitoring, evaluation, and feedback. We will enforce principles of performance, auditing, institutionalized monitoring, and evaluation process of the entire public service delivery as the primary means of actualizing our vision of the new Nigeria. This reform will institutionalize our personal involvement of both the President and the Vice President in setting budgetary objectives of MDAs and monitoring, evaluating the implementation process through Office of Regulatory Review in the Office of the President. Budget monitoring and evaluation capacity will be strengthened within the presidency. We will embark on effective micro and physical restructuring to quickly restore physical viability by discontinuing unaffordable subsidies which have left a black hole in government finances. Fiscal and monetary policy will be properly coordinated with each conventional tool transparently instead of distorting markets in favor of privileged few. For instance, an avoidance of doubt, we will collaborate with Central Bank of Nigeria for a transparent liberalization of our foreign exchange market and dismantling of OPEC multiple exchange rates. Regime which effectively subsidizes few privileged persons. We will seek to boost the supply side rather than continue to concentrate exclusively on demand management of foreign exchange. When unaffordable subsidies are removed, some carefully calibrated transfers will be Basically, targets fiscal and trade policies designed to stimulate investment and growth. Revenue shortfalls and leakages, such as oil theft, will be dealt with decisively by holding persons in position of authority fully accountable. The fourth plank of our governance priorities is to leapfrog into the fourth industrial revolution through application of scientific technological innovation to create digital economy. Building on the gains of agriculture-led manufacturing and export, we will pursue development of knowledge and skills to leverage on the emerging disruptive digital technologies, automation, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, robotics, virtual reality, blockchain technology, biotechnology, and data science, all of which are the heart of the fourth industrial revolution. The fifth plank of our government priorities is to build expansive infrastructure for efficient power supply, rail, road, and air transportation, and pipeline network through integrated public-private partnership and entrepreneurial public sector governance. Our solution to the perennial power problem in Nigeria is comprehensive and it's well covered in our manifesto. We will ensure that we deal with the issue of transmission, distribution. However, we will immediately complete the 2.3 billion Nigeria Siemens network improvement deal to achieve a stable 7,000 by the end of this year, 11,000 megawatts by 2024, and 25,000 megawatts by 2025. We will support local manufacturing capacities and power technologies and encourage and expand local R&D in universities, training centers, and workshops, through which many jobs will be created. Our sixth priority program is to enhance human capital development of our youth for productivity and global competitiveness through investment in education, in research, quality health, and entrepreneurial education. The World Bank Human Capital Development Index ranks Nigeria 168 over 173. To move Nigeria right to the top bracket of the index, we will pursue a Marshall Plan type program on education that incorporates compulsory technical and vocational skills, sports, entrepreneurship, programming, digital skills from primary to secondary school level. In line with this commitment to transform our educational sector, we will prioritize funding of this critical sector. Our tertiary institution will be remodeled to serve as hubs and centers of research, development, and commercialization of ideas for quick industrialization of Nigeria. Finally, our seventh priority is to conduct an Afrocentric diplomacy that protects the rights of Nigerian citizens abroad, advances the economic interests of Nigeria and Nigerian businesses in a changing world. In concluding, let me say that the problem with Nigeria is at once complex and simple. It rests on leadership. As our erudite Professor Chinua Achebe stated, the trouble with Nigeria is simply and squarely a failure of leadership. In Achebe's view, there's nothing basically wrong with Nigerian character. The Nigerian problem is the unwillingness or inability of its leaders to rise to the responsibility, to the challenge of leading in the front by example, which is the hallmark of true leadership. When people of competence, character, commitment, compassion take over the leadership and pursue their mission and tasks with seriousness required, a new Nigeria characterized by peace, unity, prosperity, inclusiveness will be achieved and sustained. That is what's driving Dati, Baba Ahmed, and I to join to offer to lead this desire and crusade of Nigerian, particularly the youth, for an inclusive and sustainable Nigeria that works for all. In line with my upbringing, especially my mother's counsel, my promise is that Nigerian resources will be most prudently used for Nigerians. And as Commander-in-Chief, I, Mr. Peter, will be sincerely pledged that our path with Nigeria will be diligently pursued to create a new Nigeria characterized by sustained and inclusive growth and development for all. Thank you, and God bless all of you.
Thank you. Peter, I don't know if you want to sit for a moment while we take a few questions. We'll take them in threes, or you can stay there as you wish.
Yeah.
Look, the first question, we have, at the moment, the analytics are showing we have tens of thousands of people watching. So my apologies if you are on Facebook, YouTube, the Chatham House channel. We can't take questions from you. On Zoom, we have hundreds of questions that have come in. One question is from Baba Femi Adibola, who is asking the following question. Given the complexity of Nigeria's democracy and the Labour Party not projected to have the majority in the National Assembly, how would you work with legislators to ensure the radical reforms you are proposing come to light if you win the presidential election? So that's one question. Just hold that there. And I'm going to go right to the back of the room, right at the corner there. The gentleman right in the corner. Yes, so yes, you. Please go ahead. Introduce yourself and one question, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you. My name is Ajiboye Tsumishi from Huddersfield University. So my question is simple. The activities of the hip-hop in Nigeria is on alarming rate every day. And with all the policy, beautiful ideas that you've listed down, sir, without tackling security head-on, they are impossible. So one of the allegations given to you is that you've not condemned the activities of the hip-hop. So, and the tackling of security.
Can you sum up, please?
Let me land. Tackling of security.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's.
Sorry, I'm a student. We are to line. Tackling of security. How will you tackle it, sir? Are you introducing? Yes.
Please.
Are you introducing state police, or are you strengthening the federal government security apparatus? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have another question that has come in, which I want to ask from our virtual audience, and it's from Vivian Achekwezu, who's asking the following. Vivian is asking, for many years, Nigeria has underinvested in healthcare. What are your plans for achieving universal health coverage, where access to healthcare is a right rather than a privilege, as well as ensuring sustained funding for epidemic preparedness and response? We did have a similar question for Mr. Tunubu in the last session that we did. So there are three questions there for you, Peter, and then I'll come through the audience here. Please just be patient.
first question is how do you deal with the legislators, considering that Labour Party is probably not in control of the legislative arm of the government? Quite frankly, I have been through this as a governor. When I was elected and sworn in as the governor, I have 30 House members, not from my party. In fact, nobody from my party was involved. As long as you are pursuing what is right, everybody will go with you because the legislator is insecure in his place. He knows that his people are without job, and that's what he wants. He wants development. What else is he elected to do? It becomes a problem when you are pursuing transactional policies which will benefit you, or you are engaging in nepotism where you have to. But if you address it by strictly following the Constitution, which spells out that the system is characterized by simply that we have diversity and all is included, and you do the right things, you don't need to worry about that. On the issue of IPOB, maybe you're not following me. Even yesterday, I spoke about Biafra being ended 53 years ago. It's all over the place in the space. I condemn all agitators, but in condemning them, you have to look at what brought about these agitations all over the place. It's not only IPOB. We have Yoruba Nation movement. We have all sorts. When you have created this level of massive poverty, where 63% of your population is poor, you're going to create all sorts of problems. I was speaking to a British minister this morning. I said we have about 40% unemployment. And we have about 60% youth unemployment. Young people in their productive age doing nothing. If you have 15% unemployment in Britain today, you're going to have massive, remember, agitation. Nobody will be able to leave his house. So what you're seeing is a cumulative effect of leadership failure over the years, which will be solved by good governance. When people start seeing justice, fairness, and inclusive government and doing the right thing, all those things will start reversing itself. And that is what me and that is offering. I will talk and discuss with all agitators. There's nothing wrong in that. People agitate even in my house, and I'll talk with them. So I'll deal with everybody. I'll show you of that. Don't worry about that. On issue of health, yes, we have a problem with health. We have underinvested, and because our government have not prioritized our development agenda, everybody knows that the only measure of development that is recognized globally today is Human Development Index. And this is hanged on 3 items: life expectancy, which is health. And we are low in that. Nigerian life expectancy today is about 50-something, as against the global average of 72. So we're low. Same in education. So it's to prioritize that. I just gave somebody an example. In the past 5 years, from 2015 to 2021, Nigerian budget in health is under 2.5 trillion naira for 200 million people. It's unacceptable. Even this year, our budget for health is about 1.5 trillion. Our budget for education is about 2 trillion. 2 of them combined, annual budget is about 3.5 trillion. When your 6-month budget for subsidy, which is a criminalized, listen, is 3.6 trillion. It's unacceptable. You have to put money in key development areas, as Professor Johnson has just mentioned, and I read out here, that what separates country, rich and poor, is health and education. So it's clear. So we will deal with it. But he said, how do you cover it? Nations of our size have covered it. How did India, for 1.4 billion people, cover issue of health? How did Indonesia cover that? We have big nations that have done it well. If we don't know how to do it, we learn from them. There's nothing wrong in learning if you don't know how to do it.
I'm going to take more questions. Now, there is someone who has such a strong arm. Their arm has been up for 15 minutes. Now, I'm not going to say that's criteria for taking question next time, but madam, you get the question. You have the strongest arm in the audience. Please introduce yourself. One question.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon and welcome, sir. My name is Priscilla Winkbo, and I'm an independent broadcaster here in London. And sir, you spoke about your point number 5, which is to generate electricity and power in Nigeria. And you spoke about transmission, distribution, and generation. But I think it's fair to say that our problems with power goes beyond those 3 areas. And the main problem that I see here is this. We have a population, or part of the economy, shall we say, those who supply spare parts, the engineers, those who work within that sector, whether it's those that are selling generators, and we know that that issue is perhaps the biggest issue when it comes to our power generation. So my question here is this. How do you plan, number 1, and I'm going to take a risk here, to deal with the big boys, and how do you also plan to address that economy that will then no longer exist because you have generated power? Because I'm sure that they too will rise up against it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We did online have lots of questions about refining also, and so this is a key issue that people are asking question about. So the gentleman there, a bit further along. Yes, there, you, just there, yeah. Please go ahead, introduce yourself.
Thank you very much.
One question.
Good to see you, Peter. Paul Arkwright, I was the British High Commissioner to Nigeria from 2015 to 2018, and it's good to see you in London, sir. Thank you very much for your talk. I've now moved into private business. I'm a consultant, and I'm advising companies and funds, investors, to look at Africa, to look at Nigeria, to consider investing there, and everyone agrees, I think, that FDI, foreign direct investment, is critical to the future of Nigeria. But at the moment, they're very cautious, and that's putting it diplomatically. When you become president, sir, could you tell me the sort of 3 things you would do in the first, let's say, 100 days, which would send the right signal to foreign investors to look again at Nigeria, not just look again at Nigeria, but to invest in Nigeria? Because as you know, I'm one of Nigeria's strongest supporters, and I think this is a country which is worth investing in. Thank you.
Okay. And I will come back to this side. The gentleman just there. You, sir? Just there. No. Behind, sorry. You're the lucky one. One question, short, please. Give your name.
Good evening. It's William Owomayi, the UK's young ambassador to the Commonwealth and a member of Chatham House. You've caught Nigeria by storm in recent months with your campaign and your vision to unify Nigeria, mobilizing young people all across the country. You mentioned debt a few times in your speech. Currently, the government is repaying debt to the central bank at an interest rate of 19.5%, which is extremely high. How do you plan to support the next generation?
The government is paying?
Repaying the central bank debt by 19.5% interest rate. How do you plan to support the next generation by dealing with the debt repayment crisis? And also, how do you plan to deal with tackling financial transparency in Nigeria? The central bank hasn't released its balance sheet in about 3 years.
Thank you. There you go, Peter. 3 questions.
Let me start with my sister there. He talked about the big What you're saying is about the big boys who are selling generators. Let me assure you what we've been campaigning on. Our campaign, you have heard them say we don't have structures. That is the structure we're trying to destroy. Structure of criminality. That is what I mentioned. That Nigeria is being held captive. That structure is structure that have impoverished Nigeria. We will dismantle it. It will not be there. I assure you of that. We're going to turn around the power sector. Nigeria generates about, today, 56,000 megawatts of electricity for 200 million people. And South Africa, the second biggest in terms of economy in the continent, 5 to 6,000, that's 5 to 6,000, sorry. And South Africa, the second biggest economy, 60 million people, generates about 40 to 50,000. And South Africa, in the past 3 months, have declared emergency in power and said anybody can generate up to 100 megawatts without license. So somebody who is 60 million, generating about over 40,000, declared emergency. What do you think somebody with 2 million people generating 5 to 6,000 will do? War. I'm going to declare war on power, and I'll solve it. Anybody who stands on the way, so be it. Bringing back foreign investor is very simple, Paul. Foreign investor is like bee and honey. All you need is to create honey. The way bee will find the place is very simple. Foreign capital is scared of corruption. It's scared of bad policies. It's scared of where there's no rule of law. You need to put a regulatory environment that makes it conducive. You need to secure it. That is at the heart of what Dati and I are offering. We will build that intangible assets of securing the country, making sure that we govern through rule of law. We will fight corruption. Dati have a record that is the only National Assembly member who refused to buy property of government when it was offered to all National Assembly members. You can go and look at his record. If you have seen anywhere he has compromised or put himself in a transactional position. And I'll stop running. I know how I approached him, and I told him, I and you owe it to save our people. That's why we came together. And we came back and said, we'll work as a team. We'll solve this problem. Go and check my record. I've governed the state for 8 years, and I've challenged everybody. Paul, you were there. I've been the only governor till today. The day I left office, I was not owing salary, pension, gratuity, or any contract or any supplier. And I left in 3 banks in Nigeria, which I say every day. Access Bank of Nigeria, Fidelity Bank of Nigeria, and Diamond Bank. I left over $150 million. Dollars, I didn't say naira. And I have over 30 billion naira. And Anambra State, you can go and verify anywhere. I've never had a bottle. Anambra State have never bought me. There's no land allocated directly or indirectly by me, and I've signed over several thousands of CFO. Anambra has never bought me a bottle of water since I left office. So you can go. We will fight and stop corruption. The first thing about stopping corruption is yourself. If you're not involved, your wife is not involved, your family is not involved, those around you are not involved, you reduce it by over 50%. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm sure, Paul, you know that. We are committed. We can't disappoint these youths. We must build a new Nigeria. And we'll deal with that. Investors will come back. Those who left, even the young people who are today living, they'll come back. We want to bring them back. Nigerians are prepared to come back if they can find that they have a country to go back to. This green passport, people must be proud to use it. On issue of capital, where do you find money? My young brother, there's nothing wrong in borrowing. Borrowing is a legitimate way of every government I've studied in the world borrow. Even Britain, as we speak, owns over 70% of their GDP. Every government I know lives on borrowing. Even Norway, with 1.4 trillion sovereign wealth, is owing. The economies of the world, the third biggest nation in the world is America. The debt of America today is almost 100% of their GDP. The second, China, is almost owing over 60% of their GDP. Japan owes over 230% of their GDP. But let me tell you the difference. Japan is owing over 230% of their GDP. They invested the money to save their economy. And in that, even with that, Japan is still the highest holder of US treasuries. So there's something they can fall back on. What has happened? So borrowing is not wrong. If I have time, I compare two countries that borrowed with Nigeria and how well they've done. But what has happened is that when you borrow for consumption, you have a crisis. Nigeria borrowed for consumption. Nigeria in 2015 had a GDP per capita of $2,550. And they were owing about 15 trillion naira. Today, with central bank ways and means, we're owing over 75. So we have grown that debt by about 400%. But our per capita is 2,000. That means that the money we borrowed was thrown away. So that is what I'm going to reverse. We will restructure the debt as it is today. We will restructure it and put it a long time to be able to pay it. I'm a finance person, that is one. And then we will not say, like I said here, no more borrowing for consumption. We will still borrow, people will see it, it will be transparent, it will be for investment. And that's what we intend to do. Countries have been in this situation before. We're not in a situation where other countries haven't passed before. It's a question of showing leadership, and we will be able to solve it. Thank you.
I'm coming back. We are now almost around 60,000 people just watching us and sending in questions. So we're trying to be at least a bit inclusive. We have a question from Debo Ademoyo, who is asking, what are your policy ideas on climate change? Do you have a plan for ensuring sustainability in a new government? So that's one question. Then there was a joint question from Miss Etty and Zindi Anthony Levy, and they're asking, insecurity is a major problem. What are your plans in tackling this? What are your plans in terms of security sector reform in Nigeria? I'm going to take two more physical questions in the room. The lady right in the front here. So I'm not going to discriminate with the front rows. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Chi Chikwendo. I'm a practicing solicitor here, advocating, of course, for rule of law. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for the inspiring exposition on your vision for policy change and institutional reforms. It seems to me that it's clear from that if elected president, if and when elected president, your transformation vision to increase the production capabilities across the various sectors mentioned, including agriculture, extraction industries, human resources, will, to a large extent, hinge on the depth of your level of commitment with Dati and ownership to implement the proposed policy changes and institutional reforms. However, there is no doubt in my mind that Your Excellency is well aware of the prevailing fundamental challenges to those reforms, including clientele patronage, political capture, and the institutionalized corruption that you mentioned. So the question is, how do you intend to navigate these challenges differently from the efforts of previous administrations, particularly with a view to modifying the behaviors of the key players in support of achieving those anticipated outcomes. And I was very warmed when you mentioned you're broadening the scope of youth inclusion and women based on gender issues. So further, how do you intend to quell the current ethnic tensions ravaging our communities and consequently stagnating economic growth and development, and to implement a pragmatic mechanism for dealing with those societal concerns for equal...
Okay, please. We need... The longer this takes, the less questions. Madam, please, now.
So the question there is, how do you intend to implement a pragmatic mechanism for dealing with those societal concerns for equal access to the services, inclusive participation, and integrating the various ethnic groups?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Peter, if you answer those questions, because that was more than one question.
Well, let me start with the issue of, you have, like you said, you have more than one question. I have about 2 questions. Let me start with the issue of ethnic tension. The ethnic tension you see today is based and as a result of injustice, unfairness, exclusion, marginalization. As soon as you start reversing that, they start going down. That is what I said to the young man about agitation. As long as you start doing the right things, as long as you start building an inclusive society where people's talent, hard work will match up their opportunity, you start seeing those things go down. There's tension, even in the Western world here. I lived here when the blacks feel excluded. But as the more the government opens up and tolerates and builds an inclusive, transparent, more broad-based, acceptable, they will come down. And we will show, I've said before, we will show compassion. We will show love. Because there's nothing, you're a leader. Don't go away when Bayelsa is under the water. Don't leave Jigawa to die. Don't say, oh, I cannot go to Southern Kaduna because there's a problem. We will show compassion. We will lead from the front. We're not going to walk away. And for me, Borno is part of Nigeria. I don't want to say people, oh, the region is insecure. Nigeria is insecure. Like I told the IDP people in Christmas, I spent my IDP with IDP people in Makurdi in Christmas. And in New Year was another IDP camp in Abuja. And I said to them, as long as Nigerians are in IDP, all of us are in IDP. I will not allow, and I know that you will not allow it, for any Nigerian to remain in IDP while we're sleeping in our mansions. Never. They must go back. On issue of challenges and dealing with them, the challenges you foresee, I've dealt with such challenges at the Anambra level. And I'll show you the same challenges. We're not going to, as long as you're not involved in this transnational governance, you can deal with anybody. And we're not going to compromise. We have an issue, I said, we're at an existential threat that we don't need to. There's nobody, there's no sacred cow. You either be a Nigerian or you can find another country. We have a country with the rule of law. It will be the same level playing field for everybody. I want to solve the problem. For example, I said it without equivocation. I must pull out the poverty that is devastating the north. The vast land in the north is far more in terms of assets and source of revenue generation and exports for Nigeria than the oil. It's very simple. And I give you an example of one state that I use every day. Niger State is 76,000 square kilometers. Precisely 76.3 thousand square kilometers of land. 7 local governments in that state is under control of bandits. I've tried to interview them because they have no job. They have nothing and everything. Niger State is 2.5 times the size of Netherlands. And Netherlands agricultural export last year was $120 billion. Why can't Niger State do 5% of that? They have arable land. And all they get from the revenue, from the sharing, which is the consumption, is less than 50 billion naira when they have minus their debts and everything. If they earn 6% of 5% of that is $6 billion. At 650, it's about 4 trillion, 80 times what they get from here. We will change it. Somebody talked about tackling insecurity. I've said it extensively. It is our first commitment to first secure Nigeria. Securing Nigeria is not impossible. I secured Anambra State as governor. And it won't be different. I've said we will deal and talk with those we will win, we will talk with those who are winnable. It will be carrot and stick. And those who don't, we will deal with them. We're not going to shy away. Nigeria must be secured. It's a country. Every country must be secured. But we are not going to walk away from the problem. We will deal with it. We have our armies and military used to secure Africa. So this is time to go back and resonate that spirit in which they used to secure Africa to secure Nigeria. And we will deal with it. On climate change, I've always said we'll follow the protocol. And I did mention here about issue of things like planting trees, issues of dredging. These are some of the climate change issues, because as you see today, we have a situation where there's flooding in Nigeria because we've not dredged River Niger, River Benue, and everything. And I've said it consistently. This is not difficult. We've awarded contracts for it in the past. Today, every Egyptian will tell you, no Nile, no Egypt. They have used it to improve the water transportation, which dredging this one will do. And that's along fighting climate change. They've used it for other means, which we will use the same River Niger and River Benue to do. River Niger and River Benue combined is, River Niger is 4,200 kilometers long. River Nile is 1,400. River Benue is 1,400 long. So two of them are 5,600. Nile is 6,650. If Egypt, an African country, can dredge, maintain River Nile, Nigeria is big enough to deal with this, and we'll deal with it. And I assure you, you'll see the difference. It will be clear. Other protocols of climate change will follow it. Where we find difficult, we'll negotiate and talk with other involved in that. We are signatory to it, and it's devastating the world today. So we must follow the protocol.
Thank you. The clock is ticking. We're on borrowed time now, but we are going over, as I said. So there's right at the front here, there's a gentleman there. I'm going to take 3 questions, and then I think the clock is going to have had its say. Short and sharp, please. Go ahead.
I'll keep it short. Hi, good afternoon. My name's Alexis Akwajiram. I'm the managing editor of Semaphore Africa. My question is, if you become the next president, would you seek to keep the current central bank governor or replace him? And please explain your answer.
So, the gentleman in the middle there. Yeah. Please. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your remarks. My name is Chibuikem Ugongadi. I'm his master's student at King's College London, and it's funny, actually, my question is related to him. Given the debacle at the central bank currently and their conduct over the past 8 years, what is your view on central bank independence? as a tool to improve economic growth? And how will you what will you do about the leadership at the central bank when you become president in order to make sure that their principles are in line with yours on monetary policy?
Thank you very much. The lady over there. Yes, madam, you. Yes, but sharp, please. There's a microphone just here. It's next to you. Just there, please. Aha.
Okay, Your Excellency, good afternoon. So my question here is this. You talked about restructuring. As you're aware, Nigeria can barely service its external debt. Nigeria can barely service its external debt, our current external debt. We cannot service it, or we're finding it difficult to service it. Now, when you become president, how do you intend to restructure our external debt without actually downgrading our rating in the market? Thank you.
Thank you. And your name, just so we have it?
My name is Ifeyinwa Umunakwe.
Okay, thank you. And then if we move the microphone to the lady just there. Last question. Yes.
Good afternoon. Nice to see you again, Mr. Obi. My name is Kenneth Chukwuwabo. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Cambridge. I study public-private partnerships in education. I read your manifesto, and it seems PPPs are taking a central stage in education sector. So I wanted to ask, what is your rationale for involving private actors in public education, and what governance structures would you put in place to ensure the accountability of these actors in a sensitive sector such as education? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My apologies. We've run out of time now. I'm watching the clock.
Okay. Alex, I hope you will allow me. There's somebody here that is so keen. When I was coming in, he had a question that is so interested, and is like, so I told him, if I have opportunity, I will request and answer it publicly. Okay. Let me again go. People are talking about the central bank governor. The problem, first, let me assure you, central bank will maintain its independence. It will be respected. And again, it is not the problem of the person there. Central bank have a role of monetary policy, if I'm right. Then you have this physical space. It's like a street football. When the person who is supposed to be in the physical space is no longer, it's like you go to a football match, and somebody who is supposed to play in a particular wing is no longer there. You find people playing various wings. The weakness of the physical space allows the monetary space to take over, and in supporting, because there's a weak governance structure, that is why we're able to do what we're doing. What is happening today is happening. So if you're replacing Godwin and putting somebody with that level of physical rascality, which is what is fueling our inflation and even our rate of exchange today, these are some of the things you need to cut. As long as the government continues on that fiscal rascality, that situation will occur. That's what you need to fix. I won't say what will happen. His term is actually coming to an end. So it won't be too long. So that's that. I assure you that we'll deal with that. You asked about PPP in education. I said you're in Cambridge. Is Cambridge run by British government? Now, I just want to know, because I don't know. When we're talking about PPP in education, we're talking about tertiary education. We're not talking about basic education. We will ensure that basic education is free, and we will drive it aggressive, because we have 20 million out of school children in the north, which I've said we will deal with decisively, because those children mostly have learned Quran, which means they're intelligent. We'll meet them at the point of learning Quran and teach them skill. But the tertiary education, we must find a way to fund it in a collaborative way, public partnership, in order to be able to ensure that 4 years will be 4 years, not what is happening today. That's what we mean by that. And it will be, you'll see, it's a win-win situation. That's it. No, not the basic. It won't be the basic. Then, issue of barely servicing our debts. We're not, I've said it before, we're not the only country that have gone through this. Once we move from consumption to production, what we're going to do first is that what you see today, we're inability to service our debts, is because of fiscal rascality. You're paying unsustainable subsidy, which will be stopped from day one, because it's a criminal thing. You're no longer generating money because they're stealing oil. And the only people who can steal oil are people in government, because ordinary people cannot steal oil. You can't put it in your pocket. It's something that you come with sheep. So all those, and you stop corruption, the waste, everything. And you go to seek to ensure that the revenues of government are properly collected. These are things, when you have tightened all the leakages and waste, you'll be able to increase your position and you negotiate and be able to service them. Look at it, just to give you an example. Nigeria is today the only OPEC nation, apart from Venezuela, because of sanction, that is not meeting up its quota. Because over the years of oil theft, the multinationals and everything have not been investing, coupled with the theft and everything. You're not realizing what you're supposed to. Every other nation that is in the same condition was able to bring down their rates and inflation within this period of Ukraine war. I'm not saying it's good to wait for war to be able to get more revenue, but people are taking advantage of it, because it's there. And you can't run away from it. But we couldn't take that advantage. Our situation got worse because of poor management of our own physical space, which will change without an eye. And finally, like I said, somebody kept telling me that issue that people have been saying that if I become president, that there's issue of being, how do I say, what word do they use? Stingy. Pat knew the question of stingy. How are you going to manage? Because they said you'll be stingy and everything. And let me say it publicly that people don't know what it is all about. At the heart of poverty is capital formation. And you can't go about capital formation without savings. Even in the most developed world, which is why I said that Japan holds highest amount of US treasury. If you listen or you go and read about what Professor Ragnar Nask done in the 50s, it showed it clearly. Capital formation is at heart of poverty. Without capital formation, you have low productivity, low income, and you produce poverty all over the place. What I was doing as governor, I was the best governor in Millennium Development Goals by the UNDP. You can go and check that. It's there. I won a prize for the best road network. I won the Gay Prize back-to-back on health. You can go and see what I did in health. Build scratch, teaching hospitals and everything. Improved, number one, in education. And above all, I was able to save because I believe in future generation. If you look at that savings, I said future generation funding because we want to have proper capital formation to drive tomorrow. If I have opportunity in Nigeria, no matter what we do, we'll do the same thing. We must save for tomorrow. Because that's how you form capital to turn around tomorrow. So as an end, I appeal to all of you. There's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time have come. Victor Hugo. The time today is to have competent leadership with character, commitment and compassion. And that's what Nigeria is yearning for. That's what Dati and I are offering you. Let's have opportunity to build a better Nigeria. Thank you.
A couple of announcements. First of all, INEC Chair speaking here tomorrow, same time, 1 o'clock. You're welcome. It's also going to be live streamed. NNPP presidential candidate Wednesday, same time. And finally, again, just to thank Peter Obi for coming to Chatham House. And good luck in your campaign. And please, if you can just remain seated or on the side while Peter Obi leaves. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon. Okay. We've got lots of press waiting for you.
As you adjust to the new realities for operating your business and engaging with your customers, let us help you transform your business into a digital powerhouse capable of adapting and taking advantage of today's opportunities. With our best-in-class array of digital solutions, you can conduct your business, receive payments from your customers, and perform transactions quickly, safely, and conveniently, because we've got you covered with the right people, technology, and service offerings. Contact us today and let us take your business to its zenith. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Lagos has amassed more wealth than any other state in the country to be the most comfortable city to live in.
Now Lagos is earning 51 billion naira every month.
But even with all that money, this is the Lagos you have now. Bad roads filled with potholes, poor drainage system resulting in floods during rainy season, incessant traffic congestions, increased environmental pollution, poor healthcare system, large-scale child begging, poor security and increased crime rate, impunity of state government officials, lack of clean drinking water, poor transportation system. After years of empty promises, Lagos is now rated as the second worst city to live in the world. How long shall we continue like this? Lagos is not working. We want our Lagos back. Vote Dr. Abdulaziz Olajide Adediran Jandor as governor of Lagos State. Jafueko, fight for Lagos.
PDP, power to the people.
I've been running my business on my own, trying my best to get it to the next level, but I really need some help to get ahead. I know just what to do, I'll vote it for my loans, overdraft, step by step to my dream business we vote. Vote is the answer. Salary earners, entrepreneurs, get your loans with no collateral. Yeah. Vote is the answer. Quick sign up, zero paperwork, step by step to your dream business we vote.
Vault is available to individuals, SMEs, and corporate customers. Download Vault by Polaris Bank from the Google Play Store or Apple App Store to get started today.
Vault is the answer.
Yesterday, I got a call from Glow. I won a 3-bedroom bungalow.
Yes, guys! Guess what? I won a car. I won a generator by participating in the Festival of Joy promo by Glow.
Hey, Glow don't do this one for me. Glow to make it to me with sewing machine.
I won generator last year. This year I won for
It's a celebration like no other, with prizes like no other. 20 new houses to be won, 24 brand new cars, 200 sewing machines, 100 generators, 1,000 rechargeable fans. Glow Festival of Joy promo. Dial *611# now.
And welcome back to Newsday. Thank you so much for staying with us. Earlier, we had a live broadcast of Peter Obi speaking live at Chattam House, and it was quite engaging. He was speaking to an audience and also an online audience of about 60,000 people. He was, of course, speaking about varying institutional reforms that he and his party and his running mate, Dati Baba Ahmed, had as well. Of course, in the studio with me is with Timmy Tope, and that was nice to see. The second outing at Chattam House this election season.
Well, definitely. Peter Obi is the second highest profile Nigerian politician during this campaign season who is seeking to govern Nigeria to appear on the podium at Chattam House. You recall that December last year, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the presidential candidate of the APC, he appeared at the famous Independent Policy Institute to outline his vision for Nigeria if elected into office. Well, at today's session, Mr. Peter Obi promised to build strong institutions with sound policy fit for purpose, dismantle bureaucracy in government institutions, support SMEs, tackle climate change, aggressively fight corruption, establish rule of law, and reduce government spending without adversely affecting the livelihood of hardworking civil servants. Hawa?
Well, of course, the former Anambra State governor, he was touching on his 10-point pillars for his campaign. The alarming insecurity. Of course, we know about the economic and food output challenges that we are having. He also extensively discussed restructuring the polity by fighting corruption and reducing the cost of governance. And I'm sure we will be hearing much more about that outing at Chattam House as the day progresses. In other news, President Muhammadu Buhari on Sunday laid a wreath in honor of the fallen Nigerian heroes as he presided over his last Armed Forces Remembrance Day in office as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Well, the event, which took place at the National Arcade, Abuja, is celebrated annually to highlight contributions of soldiers and others who fought in the 1967 Civil War, which ended in January the 15th, 1970, as well as World War I and II, both to keep as one, both dead and alive, to keep Nigeria as one. Apart from laying of the wreath, President Muhammadu Buhari also conducted the traditional release of white pigeons, which connote peace for the nation. He also inspected a presidential parade of honor at the event. Other top government officials at the event included Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, Senate President Ahmed Lawan, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, amongst others. Well, joining us now is a security expert, Dr. Roy Ikedibe, and he's going to be speaking on the plight of retired Nigerian military personnel and what measures the government needs to take to address these issues. Good to have you on Newsday this afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
And of course, in service of the brave men and women who have fought for our country, we know that there are challenges that they face after service. One of the many is what we want to discuss with you this afternoon, not to be presumptuous, but what are the issues that retired military personnel face right now? And is the government doing anything to address these concerns?
Well, thank you. To put the record straight, I am the current National Secretary for Retired Members of the Nigerian Armed Forces. I'm also the Director of Media for the Coalition of Concerned Veterans. Okay, so we have this, we are grateful to all media houses, especially Arise 2, and we have noticed your consistency in following up with our problems. We have brought this issue up many times, you know, and the veteran community actually have a lot of challenges, especially for some of us that travel out of the country, you know, and incidentally, Nigerian military personnel go out of this country and come back with awards, and they make friends with foreign military. And when both come out of service, they see differently. You know, and one of the concerns is housing, medical, because the body is worn out, you know, and the medical they finally gave after so many protests. We still need to be looking at all the gray areas, trying to put in concerns. Then you now look at policies covering veterans, and you look at those that handle issues that concerns the veterans. So those are just like a blanket opening.
Well, no, of course, yesterday at the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, we saw a widow of a fallen soldier, Cynthia Uba, where she was talking on the need for speedy processing of their spouses' insurance benefits and other entitlements. Now, when these things are delayed, what impact is it likely to have on the psyche of 7 military officers who can see, you know, what those that are retired are passing through? And, you know, how does it affect national security?
Earlier, before I joined the military, they have this thing they call mess pan. They give food. In the barrack, you are fed. Most people don't bother about cooking, you know, and your medical is top-notch. So your family also, because of that, they have this grace to be protected by the government. So most people that are married to military people, your life is just within the barrack. You don't like pushing out. Now, when you lose a military personnel, his wife is thrown out of the barrack because you need the accommodation for another person. The quartermaster comes to you and tells you that they need this space. You know, and the finance in the army, it's supposed to process your payments and pay off the bereaved family, and hoping that that money will help them to transit to a civilian life. So when the long span starts edging in, the embarrassment of living without the protection of your husband as a woman, the exposure of your children, if it's the male, you see them going to mix up with the bad gangs and the woman cannot do nothing. If it's the female, maybe they start being abused by other military personnel there. The wives too get these abusive responses when they go to ask for their money from serving personnel. So the issue is not only from government, it starts from serving personnel who invariably fall into the same predicament very soon.
It sounds, you know, it's an unfortunate situation. It seems unfortunately like a vicious cycle as well. But I want to get your reaction to General Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabo. Now, he recently made an appeal to the nation to fall back on retired military personnel in order to fight against this dreadful insecurity that our country has been plaguing. In light of what you have been saying, the way retired military personnel's family and widowed family members get treated? Is this something that would be welcomed? Is this even a discussion amongst your quarters to going for those who haven't received a lot of their arrears to go back and serve for Nigeria? Is that possible?
Well, the Chief of Defense Staff invariably took an office that was held by someone else, I think, for a while. And he met some things on ground, which was also being propagated by the people holding that office that he met. One of the things he met on ground was that we held 6 days retreats, 3 days at a span. We took a break. We came back for another 3 days. Veteran community with General Onisakin, a one-time Chief of Defense Staff. And we looked at how to transport the Nigerian Legion, which has not been effective but was constitutionally approved for by the government, to the Veterans Federation of Nigeria. You know, so coming into that side of office, what is the continuity on what the other Chief of Defense Staff left behind? The other day we were at protest at the Ministry of Defense, and he came there and there was not much communication that we could have with our Chief of Defense Staff. Why? Because we look for people with empathy that will always be proactive in all the things that should come negatively on their desk before you became Chief of Defense Staff. One of it must be the exit plan and the exit life of the people that are working with you. So the Chief of Defense Staff, General Onisakin, has failed woefully to fully back up the activities that were on ground for the benefits of veterans that are also churning out every day. And you said something the other time, what is the effect on the serving troops? These officers you see now, based on their relationship with the political clout and the political influence of Nigeria in our institutions, they now prepare themselves for exit plans. So they are distracted from the necessary emotional components to look at their drivers, people that drive them, their batmen, people that iron the clothes they use to come out with, their protective orderlies that carry pistols, carry weapons, their escort teams. These are the ones that fall out into the communities, become megad somewhere, begging for food, and landlord throw their loads out of the houses because the army housing scheme has also been enshrined in so much controversy and policy dissolutions that have not benefited veterans.
Oh, actually very sad. Very. Well, I'd like us to talk about ex-military men who fought during the Civil War. We know that the Military Pensions Board has said that they are not entitled to receive monthly pension because they did not serve up to the 15 years stipulated by the Pension Act at the time of their retirement. What's your take on this? How are those, veterans, how have they been surviving? What's the way forward for them?
We have the pressure groups we raised. That was one of the key points that we looked at. We were trying to ensure that they are harmonized into the system. Because after a war, everybody comes together under the green, white, green. And you are supposed to be benefiting from everything that goes to ex-servicemen in any institution that you worked. So we have done all of that. And let me tell you, there is the SDA. It's also part of this question. All the people that fought the Civil War and those that exited the military below 2017, we are not captured in the security department allowance. So definitely those that exited way back, that we have now fought for them to be paid, they are now being paid on a salary scale that was in ancient of days like 200,000, 60,000 naira for a template that says 10% of your annual salary. So after all the struggle everybody had, that president have given approval, Ministry of Finance was delaying to pay, we fought that. Hey, there's a lot going to come. You got 20,000 naira. And someone else who is a junior to you trained is getting 600, 1.something million. So we have a lot of phone calls coming in now that they are bedridden for high blood pressure, strokes, and all of that. And we are looking at why not give weighty concerns to those that were not in the times of this our economic crunch. The dollar and the naira relationship right now, you can't relate it to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. So this is also a challenge for those people that were cut off from pension.
This is a lot of information, and let me just move on to the next question. We were talking about the fact that there's large insecurity within the country, and it's an election period, and these times get a little bit fraught and violent. And of course, we look to our armed forces to help fill in the gap when INEC, cannot do everything on their own. But unfortunately, there seems to be a huge manpower shortage that we're about to enter in the police force. From I believe the 1st of February till the March 15th, there are large amounts of retirements. In fact, the Inspector General of Police, Usman Al-Khali Baba, is supposed to have retired around that time as well. That falls within the election period. All hands need to be on deck, obviously, because of the situation that we're in now. But with the situation where we have 12 commissioners of police retiring within this time period, 16 other assistant inspector generals, and 30 assistant commissioners of police. Now, these are large numbers of individuals who are going to be retiring, and that's not even to count those who are voluntarily leaving the service. Is this a cause for concern? Is this something that maybe has happened before that you are aware of? And how can it be mitigated in order to make sure that the country is safe, or the country seems safe, and individuals feel safe to carry out their civic responsibilities during,
Okay,
elections?
Thank you very much. You see, many years ago, we wrote letters to some state governors, even the Governors Forum, believing that any letter you drop in the Governors Forum will spread out to all the governors. We are saying this. NYSC people you use, these are children. They just come out from a struggle of trying to read and trying to go on strike, and trying to manage lecturer strike, and trying to manage cultism, and trying to manage situations where their parents don't have money because of the economic situation to pay for them. These are just young people that are passing through those matured stages, which in those days, these same parents that are in government now were fed in schools. Now you put these children, post them to hinterlands to go and manage an insecurity situation, a high boiling situation like an election, and put their life at risk. Every state governor can generate a list of the people that left the state to join any agency. The Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the police. And you can generate this database and build a relationship with them. You can use them during such periods to be neutral, because our training indicates and mandates that you are neutral. And you are under pension, you are taking pension. So you must also propagate that neutrality. Let the best candidate win. Every state should harmonize their ex-servicemen together, not under the Legion, because that structure is faulty. They must harmonize it under the existing CAC registered bodies that are also recognized by Ministry of Defense, recognized by Ministry Pension Board. There you can get a database that is alive and call people of different and diverse training and skills to help you manage the insecurity of a place where they grew up from and where they are indigenous of.
Okay. Now, abroad, at least in the UK, in the US, in the Western world, we know that retired military personnel, known as veterans, they are highly honored by the government, by citizens, organizations, you name it. But that's not the case here. So how do we improve, shall I say, military-civilian relationship Because I think there's some level of distrust and suspicion, especially from the civilians. I cannot speak for the military, I can only speak for the civilians. So how do we improve that relationship so much that we'll begin to honor, to respect, our veterans?
If a parent does not honor and respect their children, when the children goes out in the streets, they are treated like that. In the Ministry of Defense, there is the Veterans Federation, there's a defense body that handles veterans affairs. In the Military Pension Board, it's supposed to also handle veterans affairs. The Nigerian Legion that was created also supposed to handle veteran affairs. But you will be surprised to see that in all of those offices, the number of veterans that hold decision-making positions is very little. And these positions are where you are supposed to take decision. If I am taking a decision in the Veterans Affairs Department of the Ministry of Defense, most of the budget there would be to enhance community relationship and community cohesion with veteran people. Because when I leave the military and I go to the civilian enclave, I'm seen as an outsider first. And I cannot build that rapport if my own agency cannot come and make it a relationship system where you welcome them back. I told people, I said, every state gives letter of identification to every citizen of a state before you join the military. Your local government will give you a letter to show that you are from this place and you are a Nigerian. When you leave service, your state is supposed to give you a certificate of return. That helps you to come back in a ceremony where people say, oh, I know him. He left in so and so when he was young. So when you come back like that, you relate with the community. And as you are coming back with your skills and your expertise, you will look for areas where it is necessary and needed. Someone called me the other day that they need to train people from their states that the state want to send for recruitment into the armed forces. They need to train the youths to know what they would expect. I asked them, is there no relationship with your government, your governor, and the veteran community in your state? There was none. So these are things that are vital, which you have just mentioned. The Military Pension Board, the Veterans Affairs Department, and all other bodies that handle veteran issues in the Ministry of Defense should have veterans at key offices. In the Ministry of Defense, if you look at the PAMSEC, Dr. Abubakar Kana, you will think he's a veteran. He's so passionate about this thing. He goes with us, leaves his desk, follow us to Ministry of Finance, to Ministry Pension Board, just to try to fine-tune all the gray areas. So veterans must handle their affairs, sit at the desk, and administrate.
Does it worry you that this subject has not come up in any of the campaign discussions as it is an election season? None of the parties seem to be discussing veterans affairs. Is this a worry for you?
It's not. We are not surprised. Let me tell you why we are not surprised. 2015, when this government was coming on board, the veteran community were happy. Because before then, there was a lot of protests, a lot of inconsistencies. So we now have the Minister of Defense, veteran, the President, a veteran, the National Security Advisor, a veteran. And all of our protests, even the minimum wage disparity protests, they got an alert. So why will they sit in their comfort zone, look at us on the screen, look through their windows, drive by, and see us on the street protesting, and you get an alert for it? What kind of mindset is that? So we are not surprised that over these 8 years, it has been a drag and give situation, because there is no empathy left in such people to see their own community dying every day. Their drivers, their batmen, even those that were senior to me, they still call some of us that God has given grace to say, please, I cannot get my drugs. It's not available in the hospital. Because if you go there, they write 6 drugs for you. Arthritis, liver, and all that are not covered. Even the glasses, you need to pay some money to get a good one. For a veteran that's supposed to be a sniper, be in hazy conditions, your kidney, your liver is not covered by your health care. And these same people are seated in key decision-making positions in a government for 8 years. And the outcome was still to pay an SDA. We don't know how many tranches. They paid 2 tranches. And people are getting less than 20,000, 30,000 naira. You have paid me 2 tranches for a policy that is supposed to debar me from my skills and empower me to start a new lifestyle. So when we look at those that are in authority and those that are also veterans that get alternative income from the government and taxes that veterans pay taxes, my companies pay taxes, okay? I have a tax clearance. So it is from it that you travel anywhere you are going to for your medicals or whatever that I cannot get as a veteran.
Dr. Roy,
Thank you.
KDB, this is really heartbreaking. We do hope that those in authority, that they are listening and that they will act on it. We thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
Thank you.
You're watching Newsday. More when we return after the break. Please stay with us.
Here's a card we no go give you stress at all. 0 wait and 0 queue. Here's a card we no go give you wahala. 0 trouble now for you. Tell off it's fam, tell off it's spoiler. Who won't break them? Where you want say now only you get them. Nothing fit do sharp payment not the way. Swipe they go, you know go away. Veteran card with the sweet body. Veteran card we know the shame person. Put you first again. First banking veteran card we put you first again. Generate your virtual card we put you first again. First banking virtual card we put you first again. Just generate your virtual card.
Our music is one of our greatest exports, but our wildlife could be another great industry if we protect it for future generations. Right now, it's threatened by illegal wildlife trade. So please, report wildlife crime and say no to illegal bushmeat. Because poaching steals from us all.
Thank you for staying with us. Welcome back to Newsday. The Lagos State government has arraigned personnel of the Nigerian police force, Drambi Vandi, for allegedly shooting and killing a lawyer, Bolanle Rahim, on the 25th of December of last year. He was arraigned at the Lagos State High Court, sitting at the Tafawa Balewa Square, presided over by Justice Ibironke Harrison, on a count charge of murder to which he pleaded not guilty. The Lagos State Commissioner for Justice and Attorney General Moyosore Onibanjo led the prosecution team, which called Vandy's colleague, Matthew Ame, as its first prosecution witness in the matter. Ahmed told the court that before they set out that fateful day for patrol, their divisional police officer had instructed them to protect lives and property and not to fire any shot except if they were in danger. He said while their team was conducting a stop and search operation at Aja Underbridge area of Lekki, a car drove towards them and they flagged it down, but it failed to stop, and was shortly afterwards he heard a gunshot which killed the lawyer. The witness said a dark woman jumped down from the car and held Vandy, shouting that he had killed her sister. Justice Harrison adjourned further hearings on the matter to the 25th of January and the 26th this year.
Vardy was commenced today. His plea was taken. He pleaded not guilty. And the state opened his case. We called our first witness, and the cross-examination started. This is in demonstration of the state's resolve that within all our powers, no crime will go unpunished, and that we will bring the full weight of the law to bear on anybody, particularly those who take the lives of our citizens in an unlawful manner. And with the cooperation of the police, we've been able to marshal all that we need, the autopsy report, the statements of all the witnesses. The DPP has been able to give an advice, and as such, we're in court today to put the state's case across, and the defendant also will have his own say, and the court will decide the matter.
Definitely, I should believe in the High Court and the Court of Justice that justice will be given. I think we need to make a better provision for that, because when you get to the prison, it's sort of a strange way. I would have expected a private room, a privacy with my client, but we all stand by the window and you talk to him through the window, and even the next person on visit to someone else to listen to all you have to say. So, but probably that's the system. We have to bear with that. A lot of mystery will be unraveled. You know, the PPRO has said it. There is a nice gentleman that may be in quote spiritual effect, but would show that it's not the spiritual. Let's get to the bridge.
We are here to demonstrate our commitment to pursue this matter to its logical conclusion, and that's what we would do, not only for Bonale, who happens to be our colleague, but anyone who suffers as a result of the excesses of law enforcement agencies. Is a responsibility of the Nigerian Bar Association to look after every Nigerian. And that's the commitment that we're giving. That is why we're here. We'll continue to do that. Never again would matters like this be swept under the carpet. Under our watch, we will not let it happen.
Ahead of next month's presidential election, candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, says a vote for him is a solution to the challenges bedeviling Nigeria. The party's chieftain and former Senate President of Nigeria, Bukola Saraki, speaks to Arise News on the PDP presidential candidate's chances going into the election.
I strongly believe that the 2023 election is a referendum on the performance of APC government and party. And I believe that a country like ours, a very progressive country, a lot of progressive individuals, will never reward failure. The question that Nigerians must ask is, has this government and the party failed or done well in the last 7 years plus? And let's take the indices one by one, because I want to stay on issues and move away on sentiments. In 2015, the promise to Nigerians was that we'll fight insecurity, we would improve the economy, we'll create jobs for the youth. Those were the major issues. In 2015, you can remember very clearly, the insecurity issues in this country was limited to the Northeast. Since then to today, we've seen insecurity in the Northwest. Farmers cannot go to their farm. People are being killed, kidnapped. We've seen herdsmen, farmers clash in the North Central. We've seen the highest level of oil theft in the South-South. We've seen kidnapping. So on issue of security, they have not performed, they have failed. Let's take the economy. And again, I'm going to take them one by one. And I will challenge you, because we are all well knowledgeable on all these issues. Let's take inflation. Where the inflation level is today, it's about 16%. It was never like that in time of PDP in single digits. We have the highest number of Nigerians below the poverty line, 133 million. It was not like that. Unemployment on that PDP was again about 6-7%. Today it's 33%. Youth probably about 54%. Foreign direct investment, if we're lucky, maybe just about 2 billion compared to 8-9 billion. These are facts we cannot run away from. On the economy as well, exchange rate, 200 naira, official at 125, black power market to 230. Today, official 415, something like that. Black market 735. Never been like this. These are facts. When you take all these issues, they have failed. And as they have failed, as a political party, we cannot reward failure. So I don't even think that the race should be about APC. They've had an opportunity to make Nigerians' lives better, but they have not. The question now goes, as you've all asked, who next? Some will say, oh, do we want to go back to PDP? Let's talk about that back to PDP, the PDP days. In the PDP days, as I said, we had insecurity just limited to one part of the country. In the PDP days we're talking about, we had GDP growth of about 6, 7, 8%. Now we're seeing GDP growth probably 2%, less than the population growth. In the PDP days we're talking about, we had foreign direct investment into this country, enrolling about $8 billion, largest economy in Africa. These are the PDP days. Exchange rate was not 700 inch to 1,000 at a time. These are the PDP days. PDP days, the country was more united. Now, it is normal in democratic settings that the populace has a choice to say, sometimes you get tired of a party and you say, oh, I'm going to try another party. But when the parties fail, you come back to those what they call the good days. And that is what PDP offers under Atiku Abubakar. When you talk about the other parties, with great respect to them, to the individuals, particularly Peter. But again, don't forget that what we run in Nigeria, we run a presidential system. When you go to that ballot box on the day of election, you're voting for party. You don't see Peter, you see a party. Now, a party where from day one, you don't have candidates in all the parliamentary seats. So already from day one, there's a recipe for disaster because you know that the executive and the legislature are not going to have a majority. And a lot of people, when you ask them, what is their concern now? They tell you restructuring. These are things that need constitutional review. These are things that need you also to have a majority in the National Assembly. Investors are no longer satisfied with executive orders. They want to see legislation to support investment.
And you have been watching Newsday with me, Hawa Mukan.
And I'm Temitope Fagbemi. Goodbye and thanks for watching. Global Business Report is next with Oliver McPherson-Smith.
As you adjust to the new realities for operating your business and engaging with your customers, let us help you transform your business into a digital powerhouse capable of adapting and taking advantage of today's opportunities. With our best-in-class array of digital solutions, you can conduct your business, receive payments from your customers, and perform transactions quickly, safely, and conveniently, because we've got you covered with the right people, technology, and service offerings. Contact us today and let us take your business to its zenith. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
34 million hectares of arable land. Over 200 million people. One nation. Home to Africa's fertilizer company. Dangote Fertilizer. Pure urea fertilizer. with one single-minded passion to feed Nigeria. Every bag is a potential, an aspiration to turn this green nation into the biggest food basket of Africa. Dangote Fertilizer.
Knowledge is power. Information is currency. Trust us to tell you what you need to hear. Welcome to the program. You're with Arise News in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Breaking news, exclusive interviews, unrivaled analysis. It's you, the audience, who drives our agenda. We tell the stories that inform you, the stories that are important to you, and the stories that are about you. We are not every news channel. We are Arise News.
Hello and welcome to Arise News. You're watching the Global Business Report. I'm Oliver McPherson-Smith, coming to you from Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. Let's take a look at the stories currently making headlines across the business world today. The World Economic Forum at Davos kicks off later today, themed Cooperation in a Fragmented World. Oxfam says the richest 1% of people amassed almost 2/3 of new wealth created in the last 2 years. Brexit talks are closing in on a possible customs solution. And here in Nigeria, the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association says the current petrol scarcity may continue until June. Credit Suisse says it is preparing to lay off more than 10% of its European investment bankers after issuing redundancies to hundreds of staff last month. The Swiss bank is planning to make widespread layoffs as it pushes forward with plans to sack thousands of workers. In October, the crisis-ridden bank outlined plans to cut 9,000 of its 52,000 workers over the next 3 years as it faces intense pressure to reduce costs. Iranian oil exports hit a new high in the last 2 months of 2022 and are making a strong start to 2023 despite US sanctions. That's according to companies that track the flows, and it's based on higher shipments to China and Venezuela. Tehran's oil exports have been limited since former American President Donald Trump in 2018 exited a 2015 nuclear accord and reimposed sanctions aimed at curbing oil exports and their associated revenue to Iran's government. British and European Union negotiators are closing in on a resolution to end their long-running dispute over post-Brexit trading arrangements in Northern Ireland. After sealing an agreement last week on real-time trade data, the two sides are also nearing agreement on customs aimed at reducing frictions between Great Britain and Northern Ireland since the UK left the bloc. Wholesale prices year-on-year in Germany decreased to 12.8% in December from 14.9% in November of 2022. On a monthly basis, wholesale prices also fell by 1.6% compared to a drop of 0.9% in November. Both monthly and annual wholesale prices change showed prices coming down faster than expected by analysts and will encourage policymakers hoping to see prices decelerating. Germany's Olaf Scholz is the only G7 leader scheduled to attend the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, Switzerland, as it returns to its usual time slot in January. The event will still be closely watched and packed with some of the biggest names from the worlds of business and finance, politics, media, academia, and civil society. Well, the number of billionaires should be reduced by half by 2030 through higher taxes and other policies to make the world more equal. That's according to Oxfam on Monday, as global elites meet in Davos. The aid group made its plea as the Swiss Alpine Village hosts political leaders, CEOs, and celebrities for the week-long World Economic Forum starting today. In a report titled Survival of the Richest, Oxfam said billionaires had doubled their wealth over the last 10 years, with the wealthiest 1% gaining 74 times more than the bottom 50%. The very wealthy have grown richer amid the cost of living crisis sparked by the COVID pandemic and soaring food and energy prices following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the report said. Well, since 2020, billionaire wealth has surged by $2.7 billion a day, even as inflation outpaced the wages of at least 1.7 billion workers worldwide, according to Oxfam. Virgin Australia could be flying back onto the stock market. Owner Bain Capital said it was looking to relist the carrier. The US private equity firm acquired Australia's second biggest airline in 2020 for close to $2.5 billion. Virgin had gone into voluntary administration after a string of losses. It had been losing money even before the global health crisis decimated air travel. Aviation market conditions have since improved in a big way, and that's after Australia's international and state borders reopened. Now, Bain says it's seeking advice on how to return Virgin to the Australian Securities Exchange, or ASX. Well, for more on this story and many more, let's cross to London, where we are joined by Arise business analyst Bodhi Oshosami. Bodhi, great to see you. The already wide gap between rich and poorer nations is widening, and the richest 1% amass 63% of all the new wealth, according to Oxfam. Can the World Economic Forum that's going on in Davos now do anything about this?
Well, they are trying, in fairness to them. And first, you have to consider the reasons why we're seeing this widening inequality. In developed economies, for example, the inequality is worsened by the creeping deindustrialization, weakening economies. The ICT revolution does not favor the unskilled poor, and the high inflation also tends to disproportionately hurt the poor. In poorer countries, poor leadership and governance, inadequate investment in education and other human capital factors like healthcare all play a very major role. Unfortunately, the environment of polycrisis, whether it's the COVID crisis, energy supply crisis, rising inflation, food supply crisis, global cost of living crisis, climate crisis, adding to the familiar old challenges like the massive infrastructure deficit, poverty, and tepid growth in developing countries, all of these are straining the fiscal space, especially for poorer countries, making investment and support to alleviate poverty much more difficult. And the richer countries, in fairness to them, are also dealing with geoeconomic turmoil in their backyard. So the political will to address income inequality, unfortunately, is missing. And the World Economic Forum, unfortunately, is also likely to be affected by the fragmentation. Apart from attendance, although I understand online attendance is going to be strong, but apart from physical attendance reflecting the geopolitical cracks, political leaders may also not like the optics of dining with billionaires with the backdrop of turmoil and the cost of living crisis tormenting the poor back home. So the forum may not be the right one to address this issue. So in many ways, the WEF is hobbled. But the most influential businessmen in the largest economy in the world will be there. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, BlackRock Larry Fink, and Steve Schwarzman of Blackstone, and Michael Bloomberg, all looking for new converts for a more progressive stakeholder capitalism. But the sheep do not trust the wolves to rewrite the rules. I'm sure you understand that. So the theme, cooperation in a fragmented world, is very apt. Finding solutions that work for all will require fresh thinking and the courage, of course, to listen to all communities. And there are themes like how to foster a more effective energy transition. Of course, you have challenges of energy access inequality. Another theme, shaping a new era of public-private cooperation into investment in new technologies with challenges of massive digital divide when you look at developing versus developed economies. And then tooling populations with the right skills and helping the labor market embrace the increased pace of technology adoption with high, of course, illiteracy in developing economies. My experience, having been at Davos, is you have good intentions, a wide array of relevant topics, discussions, perspectives, and views, but too many people talking from their expert silos and perhaps less follow-up action, especially where policymakers are absent or at best distracted. But we should also ask Simon Oliver, why is the world more fragmented? What are we doing wrong? Do we need to rethink the institutions? After all, World War II ended almost 80 years ago. Let me end, however, by saying when the richer West take an interest in poorer nations, it's always laced with complex political agenda. I'll give an example. Janet Yellen is soon to visit Senegal, Zambia, and South Africa. They're touting investments in infrastructure, metals, electric vehicle, batteries, and renewable power. But they will also be enticing these countries away from China and persuading them to take a more robust line against Russia. And the view I have is that Africa does not want to sell metals. It needs to make and export chips and electronic batteries. Africa does not need to be wedded to any superpower. It needs much faster economic growth. It needs to eradicate poverty and disease and feed its hungry populations, whichever help and wherever the help is going to come from. So my sense is there are interesting topics. One I'm really watching is on January the 19th, Reigniting Growth in Africa. That's a discussion on policy actions to enhance economic diversification and unleash the private sector's massive potential in Africa. But I'm sure you know, to eradicate poverty in Africa, Africa needs more inclusive economic growth. We're talking of GDP should be really over 6%. World Bank is projecting 3.6% in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, way too low. But again, we hope policy leaders will also be paying attention.
Well, we'll definitely be watching that session later in the week here on Arise. So let's move from Switzerland to Germany. We got Germany's wholesale prices for December. Dare I say it, is this a good sign?
Well, it has to be. Wholesale prices is a leading indicator of lower inflation. That means it's one of the things that would lead maybe next month or the following month to lower consumer price inflation. But having said that, already we're seeing a lot of optimism in the sense that lower inflation means better economic performance. The main German stock index, that's the DAX, as we speak, is up 0.32%, which isn't bad given the challenges they had at the beginning of the year. Wholesale price inflation was up 12.8% in December of 2022, the lowest reading since as far back as August of 2021, from 14.9% in November. Wholesale price growth peaked in April with a 23.8% year-on-year increase. But I think the bottom line is energy prices are going down thanks to government subsidies, and new gas caps will also roll in. But is this sustainable, especially if the crisis in Ukraine is not resolved? So far, so good. ECB has been saying it's still quite uncertain as far as the inflation trajectory is concerned. Lagarde will be speaking at World Economic Forum. I'm sure she'll have a view here. But surveys show that we should expect two 50 basis point hikes at the February and March ECB meetings, followed by a 25 basis point hike maybe in May or June. But as you and I know, that could change as the data comes in.
So, Bode, from Germany, let's bounce right back to Switzerland. Credit Suisse is joining Goldman Sachs in announcing layoffs and cutting the raise on banks' bonuses. Are markets surprised by this?
Well, they shouldn't be, because this has been the trend. You've seen what's been going on in tech sector, and also we've seen the same wave of announcements in the banking sector, especially as the near-term or medium-term trajectory is still looking quite uncertain, especially in many sectors. Credit Suisse, however, I dare say in the Swiss stock exchange is up 1.95% today. Traditionally, markets tend to respond positively to this. Investors always respond positively to news of downsizing. And just like you said, they are not going to be the first. Barclays cut its workforce in corporate and investment banking by under about 3% around November 8. Deutsche Bank has been cutting staff very aggressively. Goldman Sachs, just over 3,000 employees are being let go. HSBC is shedding at least 200 senior managers as they prune the ranks of chief operating officer and a lot of the heads of the units. And Morgan Stanley slashed about 2% of its workforce. That was about 1,600 positions. So they're quite a bit, but Credit Suisse is unique. Markets still have faith in the long-running restructuring amid all kinds of scandals and gaffes. But we'll wait till February 9. That's when they announce their fourth quarter and full year 2020 results. I suspect investors are holding their fire until then.
Arise News' business analyst in London, Bode Oshosami, thank you very much. You're watching the Global Business Report here on Arise News. Plenty more still ahead.
I've been running my business on my own, trying my best to get it to the next level, but I really need some help to get ahead. I know just what to do, I'll vault it for my loans, overdraft, step by step to my dream business, we vault. Vault is the answer. Salary earners, entrepreneurs, get your loans with no collateral. Yeah. Vault is the answer. Quick sign up, zero paperwork, step by step to your dream business with Vault. By Polaris Bank.
Vault is available to individuals, SMEs, and corporate customers. Download Vault by Polaris Bank from the Google Play Store or Apple App Store to get started today.
Vault is the answer.
There's nothing better than the roar of your fans. But in Nigeria, there's a roar that will not be heard again. With fewer than 50 lions left in the wild, they could be extinct in the next few years. from loss of habitat and prey, and snares set for illegal bushmeat. Please say no to illegal bushmeat, and let's keep the raw alive for Nigeria. Poaching steals from us all.
Welcome back to the Global Business Report here on Arise News. French government spokesman Olivier Véran has announced the start of a fuel allowance which replaces the rebate at the pump. The €100 allowance will be available to 10 million low-income households.
Today marks the start of the possibility for the French to claim the famous fuel allowance which replaces the rebate at the pump. This aid concerns all French people who use their vehicle for daily work. It allows all French people who receive an income slightly above the minimum wage for a single person in 2021, but which takes into account the composition of the family, that is to say, for a couple with 2 children, that's almost up to €4,000 net income, to claim this allowance. It is individual, meaning that the 2 members of the same household, if they each have a vehicle, can apply for this exceptional aid and each receive €100, i.e. €200 for the household. Today marks the start of the possibility for the French to claim the famous fuel allowance which replaces the rebate at the pump. This aid concerns all French people who use their vehicle for daily work. It allows all French people who receive an income slightly above the minimum wage for a single person in 2021, but which takes into account the composition of the family, that is to say, for a couple with 2 children, that's almost up to €4,000 net income, to claim this allowance. It is individual, meaning that the 2 members of the same household, if they each have a vehicle, can apply for this exceptional aid and each receive €100, i.e. €200 for the household.
Well, it's day 1 of the World Economic Forum taking place in Davos, Switzerland. Leaders from around the world have flown in for the annual summit. Arise business correspondent Rotus Adiri is there, and he has a roundup of what is to be expected this week.
We are in snowy Switzerland for Davos 2023, the 53rd annual Forum of the World Economic Forum, where a number of issues are going to be discussed, chief of which, are we heading for a global recession? This particular World Economic Forum comes at a crucial time where it is being predicted that a global recession is on its way. The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank have slashed growth projections, economic growth projections for pretty much every region around the world. There's about 2,700 leaders that will be converging on Davos this year. 370 of them will be world leaders. About 190 of them will be business leaders. Actually, 1,500 of them are expected to be business leaders, 90 of them innovators, about 19 central bank governors, trade ministers. A whole lot is going to be discussed. Trade, for instance, the Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, is going to be talking about trade here. You've got Christine Lagarde, the central bank, the chief president of the European Central Bank, talking about interest rates. There's going to be a whole lot. Climate is very, very much at the top of the ladder right now for the World Economic Forum. You've got Africa and its needs as far as debt is concerned. The Minister of Finance for South Africa, Mr. Gorongwana, is going to be here with a delegation trying to get investment. The Minister of Finance for Nigeria, Zainab Ahmed, she is here as well. So a lot on the table to be discussed. You can trust that Arise TV will bring you every bit of insight and analysis from this very crucial World Economic Forum, Davos 2023. Rotus Adiri, Arise News.
Well, climate activists, anti-World Economic Forum demonstrators and select millionaires are calling for higher taxes on the rich, and they joined forces at a demonstration in Davos on Sunday ahead of the opening of the World Economic Forum today in the evening. Dozens of protesters raised placards and chanted slogans as they arrived by train in the ski resort, where hundreds of political leaders and major economic figures are meeting. Some activists, including Patriotic Millionaires UK member Phil White, called for stricter taxation of the rich. Many protesters also slammed the World Economic Forum's participants' handling of climate issues.
Oh, I'm here because the WEF are here, which is really this great collection of wealth concentrated together in Davos. And I'm here with patriotic millionaires from the UK. I've come out to join the hike and the protests here because we're in favour of wealth taxes. We really want to reduce this level of wealth inequality in the world that's so corrosive to society. My message for those guys meeting would be, think to yourselves and talk to your friends. Are you sure you're not the problem, rather than thinking you're the solution? And actually, you give your governments permission to tax you and to reduce your wealth. The governments can do much more useful things with your money than you can.
It's important to be here to show what are the problems of the World Economic Forum. We see that the WEF is inviting a lot of companies that are doing harm, that are not accepting human rights, that are violating the climate in different ways. And we are protesting that there are also dictatorships here at the World Economic Forum getting a platform. And yes, we don't believe that a better and more democratic world will come out of this forum. My message would be, don't mess with our planet, don't mess with society, because the backlash will be immense for them.
You're watching the Global Business Report here on Arise News. We're heading to a short break, but do stay with us. Plenty more still to come.
In 1894, our first branch opened in Lagos, Nigeria. And we took our place in this new land brimming with possibilities and surprises. Take Kano, for instance, where the city's wealthiest trader made his first deposit. 20 bags of silver arriving on camelback. Aren't you glad that we offer online banking today? Expanding across the West African sub-region and beyond, our early presence made it possible for all hardworking Africans to build great things. So is it any wonder that not one, but two first bankers have gone on to become Nigeria's central banker? We are intricately woven into the fabric of society, supporting polo for over 100 years and pushing the limits of athletic performance. Rooted in tradition, but constantly leaning forward into the future. Are you coming?
You first Bank.
My brother, my sister, do you know that winning an election is not only about getting the majority vote? For that your candidate to be declared winner of the election, he or she must secure 25% of the vote in 2/3 of all states, plus the FCT to be president, and 25% of the vote in 2/3 of all local governments of a state to be governor. This is constitutional, and every presidential candidate has had to pass this threshold. Even governors have had to make this mark to get elected in their states. We live in one country with different languages, religions, and ethnic groups. This is why it is not enough to have only northern votes, or southern votes, or eastern votes, or western votes. The only way to get elected as president or governor is by gaining enough support across the country and states. Let us make sure that we know now so that we don't cause an issue tomorrow. This message is brought to you by the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, with support from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO.
As you adjust to the new realities for operating your business and engaging with your customers, let us help you transform your business into a digital powerhouse capable of adapting and taking advantage of today's opportunities. With our best-in-class array of digital solutions, you can conduct your business, receive payments from your customers, and perform transactions quickly, safely, and conveniently, because we've got you covered with the right people, technology, and service offerings. Contact us today and let us take your business to its zenith. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Welcome back to the Global Business Report here on Arise News. Residents of Imo State in the southeastern part of Nigeria have raised the alarm over fuel price increase. Fuel now sells for between 380 naira to 480 naira per litre in the state. It is believed that a number of fuel stations in the state have started hoarding the products in anticipation of yet another price hike. Well, our correspondent, Saturday Ochia, compiled this report.
It is a worrisome situation in Imo State, as residents are finding it difficult to cope with the rising price of petrol. The product now sells between 380 naira to 480 naira per litre in the state. A Rise crew who monitored the situation reports that this steep increase in fuel price